All right, here we go. We're going to set up a heated circuit on the servo I. Here's what you're going to need. You're going to need power cord for the heat in the circuit. You're going to need the inspiratory limb sensor, a Ballard. We won't need an HME with this because we're using active humidity, right? If you're going to put in an inline end-tidal CO2 monitor, we can go ahead and set that up at this point too. You'll need a hot pot, bag of water, and then your circuit. You'll notice the circuit here has, for a heated wire circuit, you've got three parts. You've got inspiratory limb, expiratory limb, and the little shortcut from the vent to the hot pot. First thing we're going to do is get the hot pot ready to go. Everything's color coded. You got blue, yellow. Plug the blue in. This is your temperature sensor in the inspiratory limb of the circuit, and this is the power. This is what actually heats the wire up. So once you get these plugged in, just kind of set them aside. Be careful not to let this drape on the floor, so you can hang it up there, put it somewhere where it's not going to be on the floor. Most of the time your hot pot's going to come in some sort of a package. This is usually wound up on a plastic like spool, which you'll keep this on. Press down and this slides right in. Let it up. It's locked in, not going anywhere. Until we're ready to use the circuit, you're just going to leave this in a spool. And I always kind of tuck it in back behind here. Again, careful that it doesn't touch the floor. Now, so you're going to want to determine on whatever vent it is that you're using where your inspiratory port is and your expiratory port. Servo makes it really handy because they make it idiot proof for you. Okay?
You would think.
With a heated circuit, we're going to go from the inspiratory to the hot pot directly. You want to be careful not to put the expiratory limb on the hot pot, because then we're going to be pushing humidity into the vent and not to the patient. So this is important. The hot pot is always in line with the inspiratory limb. So we're going to use this little jump tube. We're going to go to the inspiratory limb, and we're going to go to one of the tubes of the hot pot. So now we're going from the vent to the active humidity. You'll take your filter, pop it right there on the expiratory limb, and you'll notice there's a port here, and then there's a plug-in right here. Okay, this blue is your inspiratory limb. It's going to go on the other side. So again, from the vent to the active humidity, from the active humidity to the patient Y for inspiration. Expiratory limb goes straight to your filter. It's not as necessary with heated circuits. There's a lot less condensation, therefore a lot less rain out, but sometimes you still need either a bag or a container like this to catch excess condensation. Oh. Okay, at this point we're going to plug in our inspiratory limb heat sensor that I've tied into a knot. Son of a... I'm going to leave that part in. All right. First, at the end where it terminates, is going to be proximal to the patient. Plug that in, make sure it's nice and snug. And when we do the setup, we'll do the leak test. That will make sure that there's no excess air coming out of here. The other part right here is going to come right in here, distal from the patient. It's going to snap right in. And there you go. This is what allows us to monitor the temperature, make sure that the air isn't getting too hot or too cold. At this point, I just like to take the circuit, put it in a hanger to secure that. And then you'll notice on the inspiratory limb, a lot of times you'll find these little clips, and that makes it very handy for just snapping these into place. And this one's a little bit big.
Always keep your wires nice, guys.
Yep. But it still serves the purpose of keeping the wire along the circuit rather than having this craziness just kind of out everywhere, getting tangled up with IV lines and everything else. Okay?
And plug that black part in.
Yep. Now, back here, you're going to take your power. It's going to plug in right here. And that's all there is to it. Okay, here we are. We're going to get this turned on and go through the initial check. Make sure that it's ready to go for a new patient. Don't be deceived into thinking that that is the on button. It is not. The on button's back here. See this little guy? Just flip that over. And we have power. Alright, first thing it's going to do is ask if you want to start a pre-use check, which we do. The last thing you want is to get a patient put on a vent and then it go wrong. Alright, it says connect the test tube between the inspiratory outlet, expiratory inlet. Alright, that is going to be this little guy right here. So all of your servos use this for the test. So you'll unplug. Now you have a closed circuit inside the vent itself. Come back up here. Hit OK. Okay, so we got a little error. O2 sensor failure, jet gas connections. We all hooked up here, but the problem here is we don't have actual O2 coming into the vent. It's just compressed air. It's just camouflaged and disguised to make it look like oxygen. So we're going to hit cancel because we already know there's no oxygen. Let it finish. Okay, now we've got a battery issue. No big deal. It's plugged in. In the hospital setting, we would set this vent aside. We're going to come over here, unplug. Oh, son of a. Unplug the power cord. Reinsert the power cord.
Poke your eye out, go. I couldn't let that one go.
Make me so mad. Alright, so telling us to connect the patient circuit and block the Y piece. So we're going to get rid of this, and then we're going to block that. No, it's too late. And then we're going to block this guy. Hit OK. Come hit OK.
We probably don't have like a good expiratory cassette either.
No.
So we're just gonna
Hit cancel.
in the real world you would never cancel, you'd make sure everything was
Right.
good, but since we don't have all the supplies. So all those should say passed.
Right. If any of those say failed, you would immediately lock this thing out, tag it, and get a hold of Biomed so that they could do any repairs that need to be done.
Or troubleshoot yourself.
Shut up. It's a terrible idea.
So yes, you delete the patient data, and then you can put in your settings and just have it waiting for your patient.
Okay, so we got this all set up, and we're going to get ready and get this set up for a patient, and then I'll show you how to start. So first thing we're going to do, make sure we're going to do an adult, and we're doing invasive ventilation. Oftentimes you're going to kind of go off of, when you're looking at the oxygen, you're going to go off what the patient is requiring at the moment. So if they're in respiratory failure but they're oxygenating well, maybe doing okay on 2 or 3 liters, you can start at a lower oxygen concentration, maybe 30-35%. PEEP is almost standard. I never start lower than 5 on my PEEP. That's almost always where I start out. Now if I'm going to be putting somebody that 450-pound man on a ventilator, initially I'm going to go up to about a 7 or 8 of PEEP, with the doctor's permission, of course. But most of the time they're going to be consenting to that. Everybody else, you're just going to keep that at 5. You're going to set a respiratory rate that is suitable. This is something that you're just going to put in an initial rate, and then you're going to titrate based on what the patient's doing. Sometimes you'll have patients that are breathing way over the vent, and kind of what you do here almost is irrelevant with your rate, but then you've got people that are heavily sedated, and they're relying wholly on the ventilator to breathe for them. So a good starting point is 12 to 14. I usually go 12. And then a tidal volume of 450 to 500 is a good starting point. Of course, if you've got the patient's weight, you can always use your weight calculations to set up your tidal volume range. The largest share of people, however, are going to fall into that 450 to 500 milliliter category for starting. And then you can titrate that as needed based off of blood gases and so forth. Okay, so here we are. Now we can go to additional settings, and we can set I times triggers. Up here, you can set your modes. So you've got volume control, pressure control, PRVC, pressure support with CPAP. You see all these. Okay. To start with, we're actually going to go SIMV with pressure support, which gives us a few more. And then when you've got all your settings in, you're just going to hit accept. So you're ready to go. Patient's in the room. You got the tube secured. Everything's ready to go. You're ready to put them on. You're going to put the patient on the circuit. Hit start ventilation. And there you go. Now, if you need to come off, perhaps you need to bag the patient, or you're going to transport, so you're going to use a transport vent, or just for extubation. Once the patient is off, you're going to hit this button. It's going to ask you if you want to go into standby. Hit yes, and then I'll put the vent into standby. And then once they're hooked back up, if they need to be hooked back up, just go right back here, start ventilation, and go right back at it. Again, standby, yes,